If Caitlin Clark and Fever fans didn't already love Cheryl Miller, they're going to love her even more now after she was on All the Smoke and wanted smoke with any Caitlin Clark haters. If you remember the All-Star Game, there seemed to be a bit of a bond between Clark and Miller. Obviously, Cheryl Miller, one of the most prominent women's basketball players of all time in her day. The brother of Reggie Miller, so it has been around the game in the limelight, and has coached, has done it all. And when she coached at the WNBA All-Star Game, of course, her and Clark had a little bit of a rapport and a vibe, and that was a story at the time. But now Miller was asked about that time and cleared up a few narratives, had Caitlin Clark's back, talked about Clark and Reese playing together on the floor and how they actually worked really well and were simpatico. So a lot of interesting stuff from Cheryl Miller. And I know, whenever somebody of prominence who's been around the game, the old guard, if you will, doesn't push Caitlin Clark to the side and embraces her, that has a certain impact on her fan base. And Cheryl Miller did that emphatically. Here's some of what she had to say, including what they clipped up. I'll put the full interview, the full YouTube link in the description, because I'm sure some of you guys are going to want to watch the entire thing. Always try to do that when possible, of course. And here is Cheryl Miller speaking on that All-Star Game.
I'm going to be honest because it needs to be said. I can relate to that young lady, and I felt for her.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it's like to be hated. I know what it's like to be a Black woman and hated because of my color.
Yeah.
I can't imagine this young lady, I don't want to use hate, but despised.
Mm-hmm.
And people just having, she brought some on herself a little bit because she's cocky for a good reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that about her. But to watch the dynamics and the media, they had their narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pleased and proud to see the narrative wasn't the truth.
Right.
And Angel and her got along so well, and watching them practice. And just get it. And Caitlin's like, just fly, and watching her pass. And I didn't know how talented she was and how well she sees the game in a 3D version. Thinker, defensively a lot better than I thought and gave her credit for. So watching her and just spending a little time. And one thing, guys, that I've learned is to step back and let these kids be themselves. Look, I speak when I'm spoken to. I'm not sitting up there knocking on anybody's door, offering my advice, because I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be social media, Instagram this. I don't know what it's like to be bombarded and have to be the breadwinner in the family and be a brand and be worried about what I do or say and everything else, and 24/7 being pulled in so many different directions and not knowing. Throwing the fact that if I'm insecure, if I've got my own mental issues going on, who do I talk to? I don't regret being born when I was.
Two things there. That last part is very true, right? I mean, that is a tough thing to deal with the modern athlete. Michael Jordan, it was like the newspaper columnist would write a column. LeBron James is hearing about it every single day. Obviously, that translates over to Caitlin Clark in her day. So I thought that point, it's been made before, but it's still interesting to hear somebody articulate it and not, not do it from the old man yells at cloud perspective of just, get over it. We were tougher. Instead, like, oh yeah, this is tougher for players to deal with now. And then the obvious, the thing about Angel and Caitlin was a cool anecdote. But I think the obvious point too that I've made a million times with Caitlin Clark, she's a basketball genius. She sees the floor as well as any player I've ever seen. Like right there, like with the titans of the game when it comes to seeing the floor. That's what, to me, separates her more than anything else. Right? Like she could shoot the ball, she could do other things. But it takes a true gift to have that kind of court vision that she has. And Cheryl Miller recognized that there in the clip, of course. She also talked about, some of the resistance, I guess you would call it, to Caitlin Clark in her rookie season from the legacy.
Some of your peers, they will recognize, her game, but they won't recognize her impact.
Right.
How can you separate the two? It's kind of
You
hard,
know,
right?
and I used and you know, Jax, you're absolutely right. And I was like, come on, you big dummies. Is she getting hyped? Yes.
Yes.
But she was in the backyard. She was putting in the same time,
that same
sometimes
work.
maybe more than you were.
Right.
I can't fault her for what she was given. But you know, I mean, look, as much as she was given, you can't tell me if that door would have swung the other way where she didn't live up to the hype.
Right.
Come on, folks are still waiting for it to fall.
Exactly.
Come on.
Yep.
So, with that being said, you big dummies, you getting paid now.
Right.
Everybody
do
now
with
has an opportunity to pull up their chair and have a seat. So that's the only thing. And thank God I don't listen to I don't follow social media, and I could really care less because I've been delivered from being a people pleaser and what you
Big Dummy's going to go triple platinum with CCFC, right? Like that one is going to be celebrated and loved for sure. There's no doubt about it. And Cheryl Miller obviously like really just enjoyed her time and her experience doing what she did at the WNBA All-Star Game. She summed that up with a pretty clear message and delivery.
You recently coached the WNBA All-Star Game. You spent some time with Caitlin Clark.
best coaching job ever.
Best coaching job
Best
ever.
coaching job ever.
So shout out to Clark Season for all the clips that are always shared. Ken Swift had one of those clips too, and then obviously all of the Smoke podcast. I'll put the link in the description. But I've learned over this time period that is one of the genres that is really people receive very well, which is because it felt like Caitlin Clark dealt with so much resistance when somebody with gravitas says, nah, she's the truth. Recognize it. Fans really like, thank you, right? Like it touches them. So I have no doubt that the Cheryl Miller comments will go over extraordinarily well amongst Caitlin Clark fans, Indiana Fever fans. And they're not just paying lip service either. I think that's important to state too. Cheryl Miller is not just saying this to say this. She's not saying this to chase clout. She said this from the beginning. She stood on business from the beginning. And she's just continuing to repeat it because she believes it. And it's got to feel good to have allies. It's got to feel good to have that kind of support because it's not, a random, it's not nothing. It's something of substance when someone like Cheryl Miller speaks the way she did about Caitlin Clark.